Welcome everyone to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast. I'm a networking expert and the author of the upcoming book, No Strangers, How to Build Community, One Relationship at a Time. My why is the pursuit of mastery, and the goal of this podcast is to lock arms on a lifelong mission of daily personal growth to become the best version of ourselves. So let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the podcast. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We are joined by a very special guest. He is the multi-instrumentalist. He is the songwriter. He's the singer. He's essentially the mastermind behind the Juno-nominated project, Neverending White Lights. So welcome to the podcast, Daniel Victor. Daniel, how are you? And how good does it feel to be writing music again after a lengthy hiatus?
Joel, thank you so much for having me today. This is really, really cool. I've not done a Zoom interview ever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this is great. It felt right. So thanks for inviting me.
You're very welcome. This is history in the making. And I have to say that your man cave, your studio, whatever you're in, that might be the nicest background I've ever had on this podcast.
Oh, it's all fake. It's actually just
you have a green screen behind you.
Yeah, I think that like the studio environment is really important aesthetically to like even lighting, like small details, like certain lights, certain candles, certain plants, things kind of that help evoke a certain mood or emotion, I think, seep into the work. So I always try to keep an environment just something zen-like and peaceful for me to sort of operate in. And my eyes are really weird with lighting and stuff. So like just my nervous system has a thing. So I always try to keep things kind of, mellow but it's a great little space, and it's the same space I did all three records in.
Wow. So you want a space that's conducive to the creative process of music. And also you probably want to get rid of as many distractions as possible.
Yeah, it's got to feel like, even when I'm just listening to music, let's say I want to listen to vinyl, I have to really feel that the environment is conducive to vinyl. So like I like vintage speakers, vintage record players, and I make certain drinks to go with the music I'm going to listen to. And yeah, so to me, like for me, it's always been not about style per se, but about aesthetic and vibe. And everything that you do creates an energy. Everything that you do creates a vibe, right? So I just like to make my space, inspiring.
I like it. I approve. That's awesome. I always like to start the interviews by sharing how I know the guests. So I'm a big fan of networking and building communities and relationships. So in our case, we don't have a lot of history. I remember back around the release of your first album, Act One, when The Grace was at the top of the charts, I came out in my hometown of Ottawa to see you I remember it being Babylon nightclub. So I remember seeing you in person. So that's the first time we were physically in the same space. I was there as a fan. You were there as the performer. We've been friends I double checked. We've been friends on Facebook for 11 years, which is forever. We've never actually really talked before, but just the connection of, all the different mutual friends. It seems like we should be in the same, in the same network, in the same bubble. And then in the last few months, we talked a little bit about podcast stuff. You were mentioning you're starting to work on different projects between music and writing, as far as maybe a book. And then I just flat out asked, hey, would you be interested in being a guest on the podcast? You said yes, the timing worked out, and here we are. So the power of networking, the power of asking for what you want,
Well, we all get these serendipitous things that happen, and we get brought together in different ways. So we were in a room together 10 years ago, though we didn't know it, and that we would, be doing this interview a decade later. But I want to thank you for inviting me, because as I said earlier, this is really one of my first interviews in a long time. And I felt when I received the invitation that it made sense. and I've really hid away for a long time. I mean, I really have, and I only did one web show two summers ago, that Rain Maida forced me to do. I mean, playfully forced me to do, but
It's
you know,
tough to say no to Rain Maida.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's like, you got to do it, and I was like, you know what? Like, I haven't felt comfortable in a long time. Um, wasn't sure if people cared anymore about the music and what I was doing. So this felt right, and I'm grateful for the invitation.
Amazing. I believe I saw recently you had a written interview, but it's great that you're doing this Zoom interview. You got a good mic set up, and the room looks great, and the lighting looks great. So now you're set. So when the new projects come out, you're a pro. You're ready to go with the Zoom interviews. So history in the making right here. So people today, they know you as this popular musician, gold selling artist, chart topping single, whatever. But that's not the start of your journey. So let's take it back to the beginning. Where does this, like, you're undeniably passionate about music? Where does this love of music come from? And is there maybe an earliest musical memory that jumps out at you?
Well, I mean, I believe that you're born with your passions innately, kind of embedded inside you. So it's not so much what influences you growing up, it's when you allow what's around you to almost not influence you and tap into what's in here. So I was fortunate to grow up around um, my father, who was really into music. So we spent a lot of time listening to records together. And he taught me how to play guitar. He taught me how to play drums. And I took some piano lessons in there. But I learned a little from his passion of recording, which really helped me when I wanted to become a producer, to not just be a performer, but, you know, to understand how studios work, because he was always interested in studio equipment. So that helped a lot. But I felt probably when I mean, my earliest photos where I'm able to put a Walkman on, I have headphones on. Even when I was like, I must have been 4 or 5 years old. Um, I remember I went to Argentina, and I don't even remember this. It's just seeing the photos. So that's where my mother was born, and we're visiting family, and in all the pictures I have all these headphones on, and I'm 5, and I'm just wondering what I was listening to. You
So
know?
you can't remember what the music was?
My earliest memory was like Run DMC, Raising Hell. That was that was a big record for me. But you know, being 5, 6 years old. But yeah, so music, I think really the Beatles was a big one. My dad used to make me cassette tapes of the Beatles stuff, and discovering the Beatles that young was like, you know, it was incredible. And then taping songs off the radio is really into making my own mixtapes and stuff. And yeah, and then slowly it just sort of went from being a fan of music to starting to play a little bit. And when I was forced again to take music lessons, I didn't enjoy it because I didn't like the strict nature of, you know, being told how to play and what to play. And classical music can be very stuffy, and it's not, you know, it's not hip hop, rap, punk, rock. It's a little uptight. So for me, I didn't enjoy the process of being in piano lessons, but I'm grateful that I went because I learned my sort of basic chord structures. But I pretty much forgot how to read completely. So when I'm composing now, I don't really understand what's happening on paper. So I have to have people, you know, help me if I'm writing string charts or things for other musicians, because I don't really understand um, the musical theory of it. So what I was going to say earlier about this innate sort of passion is when you're born with this and you tap into it, it just it naturally starts to express itself, and it naturally starts to manifest itself. And all you have to do is not get in the way of that. And fortunately for me, my passion and my fire was so strong that I just let it guide me, even though a lot of people, you know, would say things like it's not realistic to want to be an artist growing up. You'll have to get real at some point. but I didn't really buy into that. And so, yeah, my childhood was between being a fan of music and just starting to learn the instruments. It was like music 24 hours a day.
I've heard it said that, just like you mentioned, you think those gifts and those passions are already inside of you. I've heard it said that you need to get out there and do things and travel and try things to carve out what is actually inside of you. If you're just sitting at home on the couch all day, it's like you don't discover those passions and talents. You have to get out there and let that come out.
Well, yeah, you have to tinker and play around with what might inspire you. If you take a trip somewhere, like the first time maybe I saw, a punk rock show in Detroit, all of a sudden, this has changed my life. Or the first time I, jammed with a band or listened to a Nirvana record or whatever, was like, you have to sort of exercise and move around and try new things to see what it is waiting, and I believe everybody has talent. A lot of my friends talk about, we talk about, well, I should have done this with my life or should have done that with my life. We just brainstorm and hang out. And a lot of times I ask my friends, what is it that you would do if you were not worried about money or not worried about survival? Like, what is it you get lost in? You can just, time goes away. And they're like, oh, I love to draw, or I love to, woodwork or whatever. And so I said, well, go do that. That's your talent. It's always that thing that everybody enjoys to do the most that is sometimes not being watered, because the school system kind of pushes us to just be this, robotic, you're in a box, you finish school, you have to do all these things, and it's not realistic to follow your talents. But everybody has those passions. Everybody, even if it's making salad dressing and you love that recipe, that's the passion coming out, and no one's going to do it in the way that you can.
Hey, some people have made a fortune just with salad dressing. So.
Oh, it's anything. And that's what I love nowadays, that people are making money in new ways. Like, you can be a video game pro and just even walk through a video game and make all of this money. When I was young, I mean, I love video games. When I was young, it was like a waste of time. There's millionaires playing video games now.
Yeah. Just a bunch of losers playing video games. And you used to think it was these kids, right? These nerdy kids. And now I think the average age of the video game player is like 35 to 45 or 35 to 50. It's all the people that were those nerdy kids that have grown up that have the money to spend on video games.
Yeah, and they're designing really incredible games now. Like a lot of the indie games are just really super cool, and it's a fascinating thing. But I just love seeing new ways that people can explore their gifts. To me, that's a turn on for me. Like, people that hate their jobs or hate their lives, I understand that that's part of the growth that we all go through, but it's great to see people just following through with their dreams and their talents.
So I can see behind you a few of the instruments. So you play bass, you play guitar, you play piano, you play drums, you're a singer. Am I missing any instruments? There's maybe a few more.
Well, piano was my main, and that is usually like the main route to most instruments. So yeah, piano. And then I learned guitar. Drums was always my favorite.
Okay.
And I could be and do anything, would be, drums. And then a little bit of bass along the way. And vocals, I do my best. I've never been a strong singer, but I do my best, and it is what it is. I like to deliver the songs with other artists a lot, but so vocals. And then I know a little bit about string arrangements and stuff just by the way it sounds. So I do some orchestrations, and then production and mixing.
And do you think of yourself as a multi-instrumentalist, or do you think of yourself as a drummer or a songwriter or piano? Is there something that stands out more than others, or it's my strength is in the variety of what I can do?
It's pretty even. Like I always say, jack of all trades, master of none. Like I'm not really good at anything musically, but I can handle my own on everything musically. So like when you listen to like the Grace, and you hear a band and it's just me, that to me, I'm not a flashy player. I'm not doing anything that's like, it's 5 chords, 6 chords, but I'm proud of what happens within being able to handle each part, much in the way I'd mentioned before about, Dave Grohl, or you had mentioned Huxley Workman, being able to have enough talent on each instrument to go in and actually not only perform the part cleanly, but emotionally, and also to understand what the instrument needs to do in the song. And that's not everybody can do that. You have to be respectful of the song. Like I can't walk in to a ballad like the Grace and then just, start showing off all these, guitars. So it's not meant for that. So even when I approach it as a drummer, the drummer in me wants to play a lot of drum fills and be busy. But playing for the song means I'm not almost playing any fills. I'm just playing really simple. And I'm sort of giving that romance to the song so that every part is coming together the way to maximize the strength of the song itself. So that's a talent too. I don't think a lot of people realize that if you are a multi instrumentalist, that you have to know how to be respectful of all the other parts.
I think a big part of the songwriting process, the struggle is between the ego of the musician wanting to show what they're capable of versus what's best for the song, and sometimes, you have a Blue Rodeo song where Glenn Milcham, the drummer, is incredible. He could play anything and he just has to sit back and do what's best for the song. It's tough.
Yeah. Especially when it's just you.
Oh yeah. Especially, yeah, for you. Yeah.
So to touch on that thing too, it gets a little bit lonely and one-sided to not have other souls in the song. And it can get a little bit boxy and linear to have like just one person. So I have to be cognizant of kind of shaking up how I want to approach everything. So that's not so, I don't want it to always sound just like me, even though it does. But so if I'm going to do bass, I try to, get inspired by certain songs. Maybe I'll listen to some old 70s stuff or, I'll try different techniques and things. And I try to just, I don't know, find a way to be almost like another persona, different character. How is he going to come in and play the bass, So, yeah. So like,
yeah. So we'll dive into where the idea came from for the project for Neverending White Lights. Why are you playing all the instruments instead of putting a band together? Why you have other singers when you're a good singer? All those things we'll dive into. You piqued my curiosity. So you mentioned when you were really young, you had the headphones on with a cassette player. You can't quite remember the music you were listening to. If we go a little bit older, so say you're 16, let's say we're friends at 16 years old, you invite me over to listen to your music. What albums are you playing for me at that time at 16?
That was one of the greatest periods of music, mid 90s. So between 93 and 96 was very special. For me, 95 was my favorite. Like if I just go back and think of the records that came out that year. But yeah, so circa 96, one of my favorite records of that time was Siamese Dream by the Smashing Pumpkins, which probably would have been 94, I think. But that was in rotation all the time. I was a big fan of Sloan Twice Removed around that time, which I think is potentially the greatest Canadian record.
It shows up on all the lists of greatest Canadian albums of all time.
And then actually the follow-up to that record, One Chord to Another, was a 96 record, which I listened to a lot. Evil Empire by Rage Against the Machine, that was 1996. That was a much warmer record than their first record and was a lot of fun. Used to cruise around in that one. And then there was this band called Shudder to Think that I was obsessed with at the time. They're a Washington, D.C. band, really artsy, punky rock, very complicated. It took me years to really get into it, but that was one of my favorite records at the time. And then like a lot of the Canadian East Coast stuff, like, the Thrush Hermit. I like the Killjoys a lot. Rusty, like the mid 90s Canadian bands
was Great Big Sea. Is that one of them too, or no?
A huge fan of the more Celtic leanings. But I do appreciate dancing to them at midnight when they always put on You'll Have to Excuse Me, I'm not all right. It's like the big drinking song. They're a great band though. Um, but there was also an artist named M. Griner who had come out at the end of the 90s, who's another Canadian girl. She was the angel in my music video. And I always go back to that record when I think about that period of time, like late 90s Canadian stuff. Estero was another really great one. Um, but yeah, I was in my 90s period. I didn't really go retro 80s till much later. I've gone through different periods of time where I kind of rediscover things from the past or different genres. I had a shoegaze phase for a while, I had a new wave phase for a while, a Bowie phase for a while. Um, but yeah, like mid 90s, I was just consuming everything that came out. It was just so exciting to go and buy those things. I mean, when Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness came out by Smashing Pumpkins, it was like I was first in line at the store. Same thing with Tool's second record, Anima. That was like, I mean, I remember leaving class to go get that one, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great,
So good.
great time for indie, like alternative grunge rock.
Yeah. So in response to all that great music, a few things. So I had Tool's producer David Bottrell on recently, and
One of my favorite producers of all time.
yeah. So he produced and mixed Anima, Lateralis. Yeah, it's crazy. So as a massive Tool fan, I actually, we have a 2 or 2.5 hour interview, and there's about 25 minutes straight of Tool questions about like the Fibonacci sequence, about, the drums, about no click tracks, all that stuff. So that clip of 25 minutes is one of the most popular things that I have going around online. And man, there's no more diehard fans than Tool fans. That's what I've come to learn.
Absolutely. They're incredible. David Bottrell is a legend. Like he produced a record by Silverchair.
Yeah, two of them.
Called
he produced one and he mixed one. So Diorama and there's another one. Anyways, he did two of them.
I reached out to him to mix my new record.
Oh, okay.
I'm such a huge fan of his, and he's expensive. So I don't know, but the Silverchair record, Diorama, was just the orchestration on that record's incredible. And I think David also did a band called Remy Zero.
Yeah, it's in the 90s, right? Or
yeah,
early 2000s or something.
There was a record called Villa Elaine, if I'm not mistaken, and it is probably one of my top favorite albums of all time. It's just a hidden gem of a masterpiece of a record. I think that was David's work, and it sounds incredible.
You also mentioned Rage Against the Machine. So their debut album from '92 is in my top two favorite albums of all time. So I'm a big Pink Floyd fan as well. So those are my top two.
Yeah, that was the other thing. I got my heart broken when I was 16, like a real heartbreak.
Oh,
and
no.
I was like listening to Dark Side of the Moon on repeat. I had actually just discovered it. I didn't really know much Floyd before I was 16. And I worked at a pawn shop, and I think I stole it. And I'm like, what's the fuss all about, And I was listening to the Pink Floyd record, and like the song Great Gig in the Sky, where the gospel singer's just wailing and wailing, and I would just put it on repeat, self-masochism, listening to the sadness kind of seep its way through, and then just going through this emotional healing from this breakup that I went through. And I always remember that girl, and I always remember Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah, Dark Side of the Moon, The Wall, Wish You Were Here. They have so many great albums. And with Rage Against the Machine, so I never thought I'd be able to see them live because they broke up pretty early on. I'm seeing them next week at Blues Fest in Ottawa. I have tickets, so I can't wait, man. I never thought I'd be able to see them.
Let me know how it is, because I've got tickets to see them in Toronto.
Oh snap, man! That's gonna be so good. And the last thing, with everything you said, you talked about M. Griner. I've done my homework. I have some kind words here from M. Griner for one Daniel Victor. So M. Griner, you mentioned, was featured in your music video for The Grace. She's the angel, and she says Daniel is a lovely guy, and shooting the video was an adventure. Best song ever, and I was so honored to be the angel for 5 minutes. So that's from M. Griner.
That is so sweet. Thank you for sharing that. What an incredible sentiment. She's a lovely girl. And that was my first video So I was green and I didn't know. I mean, I'm not an actor and I had to act in it because it's not me singing. And I didn't know what I was doing on camera. And she was there to kind of help me through it. And I got to kiss her, which was really awesome. So such a huge fan of hers, and always thought she was just so beautiful. And we got to talk music, and we became good friends after that. So that was really great.
That's awesome. And so diving into Neverending White Lights, so where did the idea come from behind that project where despite being a great singer, you're going to bring in other singers? You're deciding to play all the instruments, write the songs, produce, record, all that stuff. This is a concept. This isn't done very frequently. Where does this all come from? Where's the start of this project?
Not owning it, not owning a record like that. That was the core of it. It was like designing something that I always wanted to have in my collection. So again, certain things are divinely inspired. They come to you in dreams, they come to you in visions, in journaling. And I had written this concept about almost like making a movie out of an album where the singers are the actors, the lyrics are the dialogue and the songs are the scenes. So I thought about whether or not it was realistic, to pull together, over a dozen different singers for being a complete nobody. And I thought, what, this would be a really ambitious thing to try. And I also did take influence from hip hop because artists like Puff Daddy and DJ Clue, and you have all these sort of compilation mixtapes where, it's kind of the same rapper, but he's got feet, all these like features. So it's like if you have Puff Daddy featuring Mace featuring Missy Elliott, well, why doesn't rock and roll have like, Steven Tyler featuring, well, there you go, Run DMC, great example, featuring this person, featuring that person, and not even just on one song, but making that the band, yeah, I birthed it because it was something that I always wanted to own. And to my knowledge, that had never really been done.
Yeah. It's amazing that you had without the track record, that you had the courage to do that. And you didn't just get random people. I mean, you got Rain Maida from Our Lady Peace. It's a diamond selling band. You've got Scott Anderson from Finger 11. This is all on the debut album. Yeah, it's amazing. So we'll dive into that first album. So you had mentioned previously that you were looking for diversity in the voice, but consistency in the song, which is awesome. So that's kind of your motto or your foundation for the project, I suppose.
That was the mantra, because if you're going to throw a ragtag group of singers in a washing machine, you don't want it to bleed all over the place. So there's got to be some kind of cohesion to how that comes out. And that's where paying attention to the songwriting and the concept and the theme creates a consistency. Okay. It's, the first record it's very mellow, it's ambient, it's atmospheric. So now you can stick all these different flavors on this foundation and not mess it up too much, because there's some really different sounding voices on there. I mean, like Rain from Our Lady Peace sounds much different than Scott from Finger 11, and Scott sang very low register, different from what he does in Finger 11. And then there's a guy like Dallas Green who's singing to the moon. But the way that I feel the record turned out, it's never out of balance having that much energy being pushed through it. And that was done in just trying to make the songs consistent as much as I could, but still interesting. Obviously, it can't be like, 16 songs of the same thing. So it's diverse in the voices, but I think that production and that ambience gives it a sort of rooted foundation, as does the concept of it as well.
So the first album, Act One, Goodbye Friends of the Heavenly Bodies, released in 2005. We have a fan question sent in. So as we dive into this album, Mike Lamond wants to know, I'd love to know the story behind the band's name. It's a great name. And the first song on the album, From What I Once Was, has a lyric that says Neverending White Lights. So I guess he has his question of where that name comes from. And then I'll add to it. Did the awesome band name inspire writing lyrics that include it because it's a great phrase? Or was it you had written the lyrics for that song and said, hey, that's actually a cool phrase that would make a good band name?
It's kind of an Easter egg in a sense.
Can we? Maybe we can't give the answer here.
You have the name of the band in the first song, right? And it's hard to put a band name into a song,
especially if you're the Rainbow Butt Monkeys or the Butthole Surfers or something really strange.
So I'd come up with the name of the band first, and that just encompassed the idea of the soul, where we are never-ending white lights. We are lights within that never go out, as we're energy that continues on after this life into the astral and wherever that goes. So to see everybody as a white light, to me, seemed like an interesting way to approach existence, to consider everybody's energy instead of their personality, or I don't like the way this person does this, or I'm, angry at this ex of mine or my father. It's like everybody is energy, everybody is this soul, and we forget that a lot. We're always dealing with souls here. So I wanted to embody that concept and make Never-Ending White Lights everybody. It's us, it's everybody is Never-Ending White Lights. So it just kind of came up in my writing. I do a lot of journaling, and it just popped up, and I was staring at it, and there was a voice that said, this is you have to use this name. Later on, I would come to find out that having a bit of a spiritual awakening post my third record, that name came to have more meaning, becoming involved in doing like light work and energy work. So it was like, I don't know, something that I think was scripted maybe by my higher self or my soul to say, this name is going to have a lot of meaning. And I like to think that there is light in the songs, even though they're kind of darker sounding. There's still kind of a light in there that feels healing, even though it could seem depressing, but I think there's something in there that feels healing. So so I had the name, and then I was writing the first track on Act One, and it fit. I don't know how, and I knew I had to put it in there. And it's the course of the song, and all my thoughts wrapped up in Never-Ending White Lights and Celestial Being. So, the band name came first, and then the lyric followed after.
It feels like the band name was like a gift from the infinite intelligence, or whatever you want to call it.
Everything is. I think everything is. I think when you tap in to your creative expression and you allow it to come through, amazing things happen. But you need to have either record it on your phone, have a pen, a pad, an easel, whatever you use to create an instrument, and be ready to receive when you open that channel up. And I was always ready to receive ideas, and that name came out, and it had a lot of meaning, and it's defined me since.
I think that's a great first song to kick off the album, to introduce kind of the sound and the atmosphere for what's to come. There's a cool kind of drum fill that kicks in when the drums kick in a little later in the song. How much of the drums on the album are programmed drums, and how much are drums that are actually recorded with you as a drummer? It sounds like maybe there's a mix of both, or maybe I'm completely wrong.
Yeah, I like mixing real drums and electronic drums. I do take a lot of inspiration from trip hop, like Massive Attack, that type of stuff. Electronica. So I didn't want it to be so conventionally rock drums that it was missing the textures that you can get from drum loops and things. So on every song, there's probably some bit of programming. So, different hi-hat loops or shakers or things to kind of glue it into that electronic zone. But most of the foundation is real drums. That song I recorded in a garage and get that kind of big sound. But most of the record is, yeah. And I didn't really have an engineer when I started making that album. So it was just me and a friend of mine, trying to stick microphones on things. So some of the drums don't sound that don't sound that good. So it's probably better that they're flourished with some fluff there. Yeah.
Do you think the drums keep sounding better as you move forward through your discography?
Well, I struggled with budget on all three records. I had to self-invest and borrow the money and just do it myself. I didn't have label money or anything. So much of it was done on just shoestring budgets using whatever I had. And I think the drums on Act Two started to sound a little bit better. But, it's still a basement. I mean, it's still this room, more or less, so it's difficult to get the huge Pink Floyd drum sound with just me and another guy in here trying to, and no money to really go out and do it. But I do think the second record sounded better. And then by the third record, I was kind of being pushed to become more rock. So the drums are kind of aggressive. And when you hear Falling Apart, which was the first single, right out of the gate, dun 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 gun 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 gun, and that's, again, it's the same room, same player, but we had a little bit of money to go to New York and have Gus Van Gogh mix, and he's mixed some of my favorite records like the Stills. I'm a huge Stills fan.
That name came up recently with a guess that Gus Van Gogh did something.
Colorado, maybe.
I think it was Colorado, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, he gets that really big sound. So I had never gotten that sound before because I mixed most of my stuff. Me and a local guy from Windsor up the street named Larry Thompson. We did it ourselves and we did our best, but I didn't know how to get those big, gigantic drum sounds. But there's a few songs on Act Three that do have that sound, and I've never been happy with the sound of any of the records, like to the point where I can sleep. But if I don't think about it too much, I think I got the point across as best as I could. And we always hear the mistakes in our work, but I think for what I was able to achieve with what I had here, I think it served its purpose.
That's the pros and the cons of being a perfectionist, the gift and the curse of being a perfectionist.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Art is never finished, it's just abandoned, because I could, there's always a way to add something else to those songs. I never felt that it was finished, but at some point you have to move on and go on to the next thing.
So we're talking about getting great drum sounds. So I have some kind words sent in from someone that knows how to get great drum sounds. This is from Darren Pfeiffer of the band Goldfinger and the Salads. So he says, Daniel is a solid musician and songwriter and always had a smile and a funny story when he came into Gibson, Toronto. Great dude, Darren Pfeiffer.
Oh, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. Darren was managing Magneta Lane, who sings on Act Two, Lexi Valentine, who was a really good friend of mine. And so Darren and I got to hang out back in the day, and he was playing with Goldfinger forever, I think. Yeah, he's a super drummer, and he's a super nice guy. I mean, he's always hilarious.
So after all these years, all these years later, since you've released Act One, when you think back to that first album that started this amazing journey for you, what are kind of the memories that come up, the thoughts that come up, the feelings that come up from that first special album that kicked off everything?
Well, I don't listen much to my older music. I haven't listened to those records in forever. But what that record meant for me after and since is basically it's just the establishment of what I was trying to prove I could do to myself first and foremost before I was trying to be a rock star or trying to make music for the radio or anything like that. I had to prove to myself that I can make one record alone, like with me playing all the stuff. And of course, I wanted to put different singers on it because this is something I wanted to play around with. But it was just almost it's just an ambitious challenge to see if I can do that. And once I was able to finish that record, that was the goal. The success that came from it, I mean, that was icing on the cake. You know, I'm grateful for it. There's been ups and downs, but you know, to be able to hold that finished record the way I'd envisioned it, that was the most one of the most stimulating experiences I've ever had. Just finishing it, you know. So the fact that it was so well received changed my life. So, you know, I went from zero to hero really fast because Much Music was very supportive of the video, and the radio was really supportive of the Grace, and it changed everything. So when I think back now to that record, it changed my life, and it showed me that I have something to share, because in the external world that received it, I got a lot of people sharing stories about how it affected them, how it changed their life, how, you know, they were almost suicidal and it saved their lives, how the music was taking them places that they never knew they could experience emotionally. I got a lot of letters, and I got a lot of fans, you know, just speaking from the heart and saying this record's changed who I am. It saved me. I still get that. You know, I still get people saying that. So mind you, I don't know what it is about the songs, but I've been saved by records as well. So there's, you know, like Tori Amos was a huge, you know, life-saving record for me when I was 14. I was really depressed.
Well, what you were saying about listening to Pink Floyd after the breakup and feeling that deeply, that's essentially what your album did for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's cathartic, it's healing, it allows people to express their emotions. So that as a reward was, I mean, what better reward? That's better than money. It's better than anything. I've never felt so purposeful being on earth ever than having somebody be, you know, changed, transformed, or healed in any way, or connected to the songs. Like that means everything to me. So that, to me, that record did it the most. So that's the significance of it for me.
Do you think that what makes the success of that album even more improbable is that it was independently released? Like, you released that on your own label, right?
Yeah, from this room.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was a long shot. It was a long shot to have no credibility, no history. It was a long shot to get you know, to get out into stores with it, to get a distribution deal. When I had initially played it for Rob Lanny at Coalition Entertainment, who were managing Simple Plan and Joy Drop and Finger 11, Our Lady Peace, they really loved the idea, and they wanted to sort of just help to see if this would actually come to fruition and have any success. They weren't, you know, they didn't decide it was going to be the biggest blockbuster on earth. It was like, okay, let's start small. And everybody had a very low expectation, really small, you know, a couple thousand copies, really indie, you know. And it came out, and it just, the Grace hit number one, and it sold, it went gold, and everybody was like, oh my God, you know. Of course, then they're like, do it again. I'm like, doesn't work like that.
Yeah, suddenly the labels are they're on board.
No, and that was the thing about that experience, was we were able to get distribution with Fontana Universal. We were able to get a little bit of help getting on radio and video, but I had to pay for it. My dad and I had to pay for it, so it cost us a lot of money. And when the success happened, it was kind of like, oh, okay, everybody, this is real. It shocked me because I didn't think that a ballad like The Grace would be a number one song because it's very slow. And radio at the time was very, Nickelback oriented. And this is just two different things. But I guess that's what people kind of needed in a way. So it made sense. And then after, you have record companies, management labels wanting to leech you and extract more because there was some money that had come in then. And that's when I lost my ship. By the time I was on to Act 3, there was so much pressure to put something out that would sell. And I don't know what's going to sell. I didn't know what was going to sell when I made the first record. I just did what I loved. So, when it's all said and done, everybody left after the third record. Like, the third record didn't sell. And then all the people in the industry just pieced out. And I was like, this is the single most hurtful thing I could experience beyond emotional trauma, because my support group is there to help ensure that my art gets into the hands of the world. I don't know how to do that. So I needed them. And they didn't care because they only wanted short-term gains. And that's why the third record ended up sounding more rock. And I mean, I would never do anything that I didn't believe. So I still believed in it, but I was not myself. By the time I was making my last record, they had threatened me. Some of them called me and told me that I would fail completely unless I had a big hit and all this stuff. And I just thought, I don't like that. I don't want music to be about that. And it made me feel really bad. So I haven't made a record since. That's how traumatizing it was.
Do you think it was that traumatizing or more traumatizing than normal because you are the project? So it's not like you're one of 7 band members where you lose support and you still have the other band members that are there with you trying to traverse, this stuff. It's one person, one project, one idea, and then the rug's pulled out under you.
There's no morale if it's just me. So I was really, I counted on everybody, but it was management. And, they said, oh, we're not a good fit anymore, and I love them very, very much. I'm not saying anything bad about them, but I understand there's a business to this. So it might not make sense for them to keep an artist on that's not making the money if they have to keep the lights on. Like, that's totally fine. But, as somebody who believes in working with people and through the long and thick of it, it was a little short-changed. But my agent, he broke out, dumped me completely, which was like, for playing live shows, he didn't even tell me. That was really weird. Management went, day-to-day management went, and the label pretty much folded. Maple Music folded at the time. And all of a sudden, overnight, there was nothing. And the record cost me all of the money that I had to my name. Like, everything I had, I put into that record. And so that was it. I lost everything, and I hit rock bottom. And then at that time, I'd been in a relationship for 5 years, and she left too. Married a doctor. And
those doctors, they'll get you,
So it was like one thing after the next started to happen. And then you wake up one day and you're like, I thought the universe wanted me to make music. I thought God wanted me to make music. I thought, I could at least, be able to have a career that was somewhat successful, because my counterparts like Dallas Green and the other bands that were out when I was out were doing really well. So it shifted really quick, and it just went dead. And the emotional trauma I experienced from that was necessary for me to have, like, basically a dark night of the soul, a questioning, a reevaluation of why I'm here. And it changed me a lot. So I'm very grateful for it. And I would never sell out or compromise my ideas or beliefs now. Like, I didn't really do it then, but I still felt I was pushed around a lot. And I would never do that now. So anybody that ends up wanting to be on my team, believes in the project, has to have that heart and belief. And the money if it comes, it comes. And if it doesn't, you're still changing the world by releasing your creativity, which is, I think, the most important.
Absolutely. The peak of that album was, as you mentioned, with the release of the first single, The Grace. So it features Dallas Green of City and Color. The single goes gold. The single goes to #1 on rock radio, goes to #1 on Much Music and Much More Music. It was the 6th most played rock song period in the country that year. Just like unbelievable success. And I have a quote here from someone that was in the thick of all of that at the time. This is from Joel Carriere from Dine Alone Records. So this is the man behind City and Color, Alexisonfire, a lot of Canada's biggest bands. This is what he has to say. Within months of each other, Daniel Victor's song The Grace, City and Color's Save Your Scissors, and Alexisonfire's Accidents took over Much Music and radio waves coast to coast. Each song was distinctively different and equally as amazing, which helped cement Dallas Green as one of Canada's best and most versatile voices. The Grace is forever a part of City and Color's story and a timeless song at that. So that's Joel Carriere, who knows something about music in Canada.
Thank you for sharing that. I haven't seen or talked to Joel in a long time, and that it brings back memories, back when I was working with Dallas. And there was a magic that happened at that time, and City and Color, which was recorded, 4 of the songs recorded in this room from his debut record, Sometimes. So I do have his platinum record hanging, which is, I was just so honored to be a part of that. But somebody had mentioned to me that Dallas had this incredible voice, and he was the singer in Alexisonfire, and he was looking to do this, the solo project. And so at the time there was like, I wasn't out and he wasn't out solo. So when I heard his acoustic songs, I'm like, wow, this guy has a real sentimental, emotional quality to his voice. Save Your Scissors is a great song. Coming Home is a great song. That album is really special. And we were just, we were making this magic then. And all of a sudden, Alexisonfire gets really, well, they were already pretty famous, but they just took off. And then, and Dallas's career just went like through the roof, like he was playing stadiums after that. It was like, wow. And, I had my little song there too. And there was that magic that was happening. And I was really grateful that Joel gave me an opportunity to work with Dallas, because he was doing really well at the time, and they didn't have to give me any, like, I didn't know anybody. There was no like money necessarily involved. It was just a small sort of little deal we did to get things done. But something magical happened in that Dallas and I were brought together, and Joel facilitated that. And I love everything he's done with Dine Alone, and I've always wanted to work with Dine Alone myself. But so yeah, that was a really magical time. That was 2000 and about 2006 when everything really hit. And yeah.
And wasn't that song specifically The Grace like a last minute addition to the album? Like the album was mostly done, and within a month of it having to be released is when you guys wrote or recorded the song. Is that true? Or is that just the lore of Neverending White Lights and The Grace?
The lore of The Grace.
Yeah.
There was another song I recorded with Dallas, and it's the B-side on the 7-inch that it's recently been made available by.
That's the 2-song demo or 2-song EP that's out.
Yeah, so it's called My Fate, and we did it here, and I got a glimpse at Dallas's potential, and I thought, you know what, this song is not good enough. It's just not, to have a singer like that. That's the other thing, right? With Act One and with these records is, when you're writing songs for other artists, you really want to showcase their best. Sometimes you want to showcase things that are eclectic about them, or different or unique, hear them in a different light. But with Dallas, with a voice like that, I've got to write something higher. So it was almost like he was toying with the first song. If you listen to that song, it's like, it's a good song, but I'm like, this guy's got such an incredible gift. We have to unleash it. So I called him back and I said, I have another song, which was The Grace. Now that I wrote it in 20 minutes, right there by that plant, and it just came out, like it just popped in my head, and the record was coming out in September. This was August, I think, almost July or August. So it was like almost going to mastering. So it was the very last song on the record, and yeah. So the song comes out of me, and I'm specifically thinking that this is going to be special. I didn't know it was going to be as famous as it was, but I knew that it was special. I thought I had ripped somebody off because the chorus was so catchy. So I was looking through my songs to see if I'd stolen an idea, and uh, lo and behold, it was my own. So I gave it to Dallas, and he said, "Yeah, I'll do another one."
Wow.
Like, oh God, thank God, we've got two now. So we did that vocal recording in St. Catharines, and Joel again let us do it. I was a nobody, totally, and it got slapped on the record like 2 nights before mastering. We were still mixing it, So I was like, hey, final mix. We got the mastering appointment, and then I didn't know that it was going to be the single. So when I played it to my team that was helping me at Fontana Universal, Kim Cook, who's the radio guy, he was walking by the room, and he says, "That's the hit." And he knows his hits, I guess, right?
Was Save Your Scissors already out at that point or still not?
I don't think so.
Just wondering if there's the influence of this City and Color guy starting to build up and he's on that song too, but maybe not.
Maybe, well, there was some buzz about Dallas at the time. And so, yeah, I mean, obviously Dallas's name helped interest in the song. So see, everything kind of leads to where it leads. So, the radio's familiar. They're not familiar with me, but they're familiar with City and Color. So that worked. City and Color had a record coming out, so that worked.
And
Right.
at least the Alexis on Fire affiliation, right? They've had a few gold or platinum albums at that point.
And then you have the sound of like emotional emo, which was a big thing. So Dallas had the hair, all the tattoos, and then I had kind of like the more the gothic sort of Victorian thing, which could be a little bit of an emo twist, and everything was just right at that time for that to happen. So
can you imagine that album without that song? Had you not, in 20 minutes come up with that song right before it's done?
No, that was a gift. When I write, I channel. Like I don't remember doing it, and I end up with songs. I don't remember how they were born. So The Grace was another one. Is like I barely remember. I don't remember anything about it except that I was sitting there and it just happened. But the record wouldn't be the same without that song, and it's kind of positioned in the middle end as this apex to the journey. And obviously I think it's probably what most people listen to the most on that record. But if you start from the beginning, there is an arc, and every song does connect. So The Grace kind of comes in where it's kind of like the major questioning of put me where I belong, where am I really supposed to be, that starts with the first song, Would You Settle for a Wasted Life. It's like there's going to be some questioning on this record lyrically about life, death, existence. So when The Grace comes in, now you're actually asking your angels, do I belong on earth or do I not? Because it was a song kind of about suicide in a way. About
is it true that the original title is The Grace of a Happy Death? Is that true?
Yeah, but that was just such a sad.
The Grace is just such a nice name, and you can make it bigger on a poster. And
I've said this before, and it's important to me because it's okay to have sad feelings. It's okay to have sad thoughts. It's okay to feel emotional about things. It doesn't have to be hidden. It doesn't have to be like you have to be a macho guy that doesn't speak about depression or sadness. Like, it's fine. And we've all probably had low points in our lives where we've thought like, what's the point? And for me, it just didn't seem strange to talk about suicide in that way. Like I felt like, okay, well, like really, what am I doing here? I felt uncomfortable a lot of my life in my skin. So that song was me really trying to figure out, like, can I die happily and not piss everybody off? Will I be pissing my family off? Yes. Will I be pissing angels off? Probably. It's like, you know, help me decide where I need to be, because I was really at that point that I really felt life was just very difficult for me to exist. I don't mean that like that I was like underprivileged or anything like that. I mean just like physical existence I struggled with. So that album had to be that story, and that song was kind of the peak of it. And even with the chord in the chorus, like, you're not coming back for me, there's things I would never be, so used to being wrong, put me where I belong. And it's this big E major chord, and it's kind of like this flooding of emotion. And so it was put on the record for that. And I'm grateful that it happened, because then the record became the record, and then everybody got a chance to hear it.
The deep thinkers are always wondering not why some people are depressed, but why isn't everyone depressed? Because we're the only species that's aware of its own imminent doom. So, it's tough every day being aware that you will die. Like, it's just a matter of time. Like, do you have a few years left? Do you have a long time? Do you have no time? So yeah, it's tough being a human being. It's good to have that self-awareness. We have this consciousness and awareness that other animals don't have, but there's also, the downside is that you do know that there is a time bomb going.
It's terrifying, and most won't contemplate that until they're sick or old. And then you have this sort of, that's why, most people in churches and stuff are older, because they're starting to come to terms with, where am I going now? And of course, when you have an accident or you're sick or something, you really want to know what's going on. But when you're young, I mean, besides the adolescent phase, which can be emotional, I think, for most people, you're kind of busy, school and friends, and you have your ups and downs, but there's other things to do other than contemplate existence and the fear of death. But I really felt I wanted to get that out of the way when I was younger, so that I could bring more meaning to my life as I got older, because I wouldn't want to go and do anything with my life that I didn't feel like made sense, like I had meaning and purpose to it. So I faced death a lot. I mean, there's even a song on the record called "Life Is a Dead Scene." Like, that's how on the nose is that about just this feeling that, and again, like when you grow up and you look around at the idea that you have to be successful and that you have to have certain things and that you have to keep, surviving and breathing, and you got to keep away from illness and unwellness. And then you got to also be a provider for other people. And it's just, there's a lot. And we don't really have a chance to sit there and kind of face, like, what are we really doing here? So Act One was my going through that expression.
A big part of Stoic philosophy is looking at death. Like, you're aware of death constantly, and death is a great way to live more fully. Like, being aware that no, I don't have a lifetime. Like, I could have just today. And someone like Steve Jobs, at the point where he knew he was going to pass away from cancer, he does that famous commencement speech. And one of his big points was that, death definitely helps you live a better life. Tell the people you love that you love them. Yes. Whatever is important to you, do that. Whatever, pursue what is meaningful, those kind of things.
Yeah. It can give your life meaning to, give you this sort of linear sense of, okay, accomplish all your goals while you're, able to, and give gratitude for the things that you love, and pay more attention, be more present in the now moment. I personally do believe that there is no end to existence, just sort of earthly experience. So from that perspective, it actually gets really liberating, because then you're not afraid of death at all, because it's not real. And it takes time. It took me a long time to kind of feel through that. Um, and that could change as I age. But I've completely been able um, to leave all fear of death, and I just try to focus on just the now. Because if I start to worry about the future and things that haven't happened yet, that might happen wrong, then I ruin my day. So I try to stay focused on the present and just do what I can at the time and enjoy, the moment in the now.
I just finished a book called A History of Nearly Everything, something like that. And they go through, that basically everything is energy. It's like nothing is created or destroyed. It just is. And we're all made of atoms. And when you die, it's just a transfer of energy to the next thing. And I guess that's a kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is if you look at quantum physics and you actually look at your body, there's nothing there. And it's like, let's not forget that. You know what
There's
I mean?
actually a lot more space than anything, right?
Oh,
Which is crazy.
yeah. And we can just do that right now and look with a microscope really, really far down into the quantum area and start to see that your bone isn't really solid, that the table's not solid. So what does that imply, other than the fact that it's just empty space? It's just energy emanating in what we call time, but it kind of just, these electrons pop in and out of place. And then through your mind, your consciousness, you kind of form things. You see things, your eyes see things, you process, your brain's a computer, and you form everything around you, but it's kind of illusory in a sense. It's kind of holographic. So I think when you start to research those kinds of concepts, it changes the way you live, because you're not so worried about everything being so concrete anymore. And you can also play around with your life. You can play around with the field, because you're kind of, in a sense, interacting and interfacing and creating the things that you're experiencing.
Sounds like you put a lot of thought into it during the 10-year hiatus where you were, doing the personal growth and the soul searching and all those things.
Well, it's been 10 years. I mean, if you consider Act One and the music as being sort of the beginning of my really digging deep to figure life out, and that was 15 years ago. I've moved through a lot of different phases. This is just the phase I'm in today. It's whatever makes sense to you.
Yeah.
I could become a Mormon tomorrow. I don't know. It's like, I'm in the energy phase of things now, and it makes sense for me. So
Yeah. Basically, the more I read about stuff about the meaning of life and all that, it's that essentially everything is meaningless. Like in the scope of the universe, it's like we're just this blip that's here and there. And even the most, like the Steve Jobs and the Einsteins, it's like within a few hundred years, their greatest accomplishments, everything will be forgotten. And part of that can be depressing, but also it's that life is whatever you make it to be, whatever to you is meaningful, whatever makes it worth it for you to get out of bed every day and pursue something. It's you have to figure out what to you is worth the sacrifice that is life, and what is meaningful, and all those. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's what I get out of all of this is, look,
you unlock the secrets of existence itself. What else is there except for what drives you to be you? That we get confused thinking that it has to come from family members, teachers. I have to be a father. I have to be a worker here. I've got to make money and retire. And it's like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do? And a lot of people say, well, I don't want to be doing this. And that's what it is. There's a line between being able to really create a life that is you experiencing the you that you want to be, and believing that you're forced into something that you don't want. We were tricked into believing that we have to be what we don't want. And the more that play along with that, the more that buy into it and perpetuate the idea. So then you have a world where, people are uncomfortable. And that's why people have anxiety. That's why people have depression. It's not like the chemical imbalance that you have in your body comes from your body maybe not making the right sort of things that it needs to feel happiness or whatever, or comfortable in your life. But if you're constantly doing what you don't like and you're constantly being something that you don't agree with, you're going to feel awful. Like you can't escape that. Like it's inside of you to get a message from your higher self, let's say, or your soul. I don't like this. So if you're in a relationship with someone who's abusive or toxic, it feels that way for a reason. But when you say, well, this is the way life is, well, now you've cemented that, and you don't have to, because it's not really like that. You're kind of creating everything. So, I mean, I speak about that, and I write about it, and I share with my friends these parts of my self-healing that I've been through. And it's hard for people to take responsibility for their own lives because not everybody's happy. But I can't point, like, I'm not pointing the finger at the record companies and the labels. I'm saying this is an experience I had. Okay. This was an experience I had. What can I learn from it? Where can that bring me? What about it don't I like? Well, now I know what I don't like. I don't like having to say, for example, sell out my music or be who I'm not. So I've learned more about myself in the experience that sucked. Right. But if I say, oh, that's the way life is, it sucks. Well, then you're energizing and creating that, and you're going to get more of those types of things. So, yeah.
And perhaps Act 4 that you're working on will be your magnum opus from all the experience that you've had, right? Where you're not going to give in to any pressure from outside sources. You're gonna create what you're supposed to create, and maybe that's what was needed, was that time off and that experience.
Everything's divinely sort of oriented. I'm really proud of the new music. I think it's the best I've ever written. And after the 10, 11 year hiatus, I'm more comfortable with who I am as an artist. And I'm not trying to sell records. I'm not trying to, I mean, I'd like to sell records and I want to make money, but the drive behind my music is to express my creativity, which I believe is a gift that needs to be expressed. I do believe in angels. I do believe I am channeling some of the works of angels. And I think that the songs have frequencies in them that other people on a soul level or energetic level vibrate with and resonate with. And that's where some of that healing comes. So if I can help people through my songs the way I've been helped with my songs, as I said before, then that's what I'm here to do, and I'll feel a lot better about my life. Does it come with money automatically? I hope so, but if not, I'll find another way. I mean, I've for 10 years I haven't really had any other means to support myself, and I just trust the universe and trust the process, and it's leading me through the woods, and through more woods, and then some obstacles and challenges. And you kind of keep getting hit with the same things until you learn those lessons. So on the other side of it now, I do believe Act 4 is going to be just a really special record. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I've heard that the lesson you need to learn is where you least want to look. So
that's what we call shadow work. If you can face the parts of you that you hate the most, that's where your greatest expansion is. That's where your greatest growth is, right? We don't want to face that. So we distract ourselves. We drink and we do drugs and we work, and, we focus on, reality TV shows, and we just do things that are fun, but they also take us away from the darkness and the shadow that we have. And we all have it because it's written in our codes. I believe we've reincarnated many times, and I think we carry a lot of it from our past lives as well. I believe that, even when you're in the womb of your mother and she's stressed out or she's having, issues in her life, that it's going into your own body and own DNA, that you might be born predisposed to certain types of mental health issues or physical issues. And, you know, a lot of us are bullied when we're young, and a lot of us were abused by family, and just there's a lot of trauma that builds up. And if we don't face that trauma, it turns into some nasty things. It could be physical illness, unwellness. It could be depression. It could be mental unwellness. You know, it could even be a real chronic disease. You know, um, I I am of the thought and belief that if you've cleared all of the stuff you don't want to look at, that you don't like about yourself, or that you don't like about others, or be it forgiveness for people who hurt you, whatever, all this stuff you don't want to face, it's just sitting there with so much like it's taking up so much space inside you that when you get rid of it, you can fill that with love, and you can fill that with light, and you can fill that with good feeling things. But if you haven't got it out of your system yet, it's going to come up when you're triggered. So when we're triggered by things and get like this, well, that offends me. It's like, if I was still really sensitive about the music industry, I'd be really angry and triggered every time Dallas was making money, which I used to be upset because Dallas did really, really well at a time when I didn't. And I was jealous of him because he could go on stage and perform for 3,000 people, 10,000 people, and I was trying to figure out how to pay for a coffee. And I'm like, well, I'm talented too. What happened? Okay, well, there's lessons there. What is it about him that was making me jealous? Well, I want this and I want that. Well, you know, is status and possessions and fame really what I'm on earth for?
Yeah, comparison is the thief of joy, right? So that's a tough one.
Yeah. So by facing the things that I didn't want to face, that's where my healing was. And that's where I think for all of us that we can, you know, you can really shake anything that's been plaguing you if you're willing to go into that darkness and face it. And there's lots of different ways you can do that. I mean, I like writing things down, journaling. But yeah, and there's a really great exercise I do with my I have this incredible coach. Her name's Georgia Jean, and she's completely transformed my life. And she's got these really incredible exercises about loving and accepting all aspects of yourself, even the ones you don't like, so that you would say to yourself, I love and accept the part of me that lost all the money in my career. I love and accept the part of me that didn't get the job. I love and accept the part of me that got divorced. Instead of being angry at that aspect of you, because it's still you, you accept it and you love it, then you don't create friction to it. Well, no resistance means no pain, because you're accepting that you created this experience. You're not against it, and you implement it. And the more you start to do this, everything changes. Your physical appearance changes, your health changes, your mood certainly changes. And the other option is drugs, which do you want to be on, 7 medications for the rest of your life? I think we're moving in a new direction now. I think, more alternative methods and self-work methods. And so, yeah, I believe that stuff works.
It takes a lot of courage and a lot of love to acknowledge those darker parts of yourself.
That's the strongest test you'll ever face. And I always say this: can you look yourself in the mirror, naked if you need to, and say, I love you? And you'd be surprised how many people cry when they do that.
Yeah.
It's hard.
I hear you. I want to get into, we're going to get to Act 4, whatever we can. I have a couple questions to wrap up Act 1, and then a few questions for Act 2 and 3. For Act 1, we talked about, like, this was your brainchild. This is before you were a household name. You funded it. You independently released it. And that album got a Juno nomination. I believe it's Best New Artist. What does it mean to you that your country on that project acknowledged basically your hard work and your gift? And what you gave out into the world. That's a big deal, man. That's Canada's Grammys for our American listeners here, you know.
You don't have to tell me. I daydreamed about that my whole life, and I had visualized being there. I had visualized being at the Junos mentally, and when I was there, it was the same as my dream was. So it meant a lot to me, obviously, because it's Canada's biggest award show, but also just growing up listening to all these bands and artists and always wanting to do that. And then finally having a chance to be around sort of what's the pinnacle of, like, you know, the award. Even Much Music Video Awards was a really big deal for me. I think there's one in here, which is really cool. 7 nominations and finally got one.
Seven times the charm. It's funny story with so Finger 11, which ties in with you because Scott Anderson's on one of the songs. Finger 11, it was on their 7th Juno nomination. So they had already, Rainbow Butt Monkeys album. They put out Tip, Grace of Blue Skies, self-titled, and it was only at the peak of Paralyzer that they won their first Juno 7 nominations later. So
that record was huge.
Yeah, globally, not just Canada.
Yeah, that's crazy. But I didn't win, and I never got re-nominated. So I was actually really angry because Act 2 I thought was a better record. And I thought it really showed off like this space between more sort of esoteric rock and accessibility at the same time, because it's still accessible. There's still melodies on it. It didn't get recognized, and then Act 3 didn't either. So I was really disappointed, and it made me really uncomfortable for a while to watch the Junos and to think that I wasn't recognized for 2, but I was for the first one. So I wonder if it had more to do with the sales than the content itself. But what I learned was it's an amazing feeling to be nominated for something on such a grand scale for this country that I grew up watching on TV. It's basically like one of the I've made it points to say, okay, now you can put Juno nominee in your resume. That was like a huge deal for me. So I'm really grateful for that. And it also gave me an opportunity to wrestle with the idea of competition personally, on how I feel about being judged against a fellow artist. And I actually, Star TV did a reality show on my journey to the Junos and Tommy Swick, who is an artist that won, and they kind of pinned us against each other in the show. And only one can win.
Those bastards.
But that's exciting television. Well, probably not, but the idea of, like, you watch Top Chef and everyone's fighting each other, Cutthroat Kitchen. It's like, why don't you cook together? Like, collaborate,
make one masterpiece. Yeah.
So I was pitted against this other guy, and then there were cameras on us all the time. It's like, who's gonna win? And I was like, this seems strange to have, like, my music's better than his music's better than mine. I don't think there is a better.
But it's also not quite fair, because I think he was nominated for like 3 Junos and you were nominated for Best New Artist. But I guess maybe they were looking at just the Best New Artist category or something.
None of it makes sense necessarily, but we were in our category. There was also 2 Canadian Idol winners, which to me is not necessarily artistry in the same sense of it. It's more vocal ability, but whatever. So Patrick Watson was also nominated, who blows my mind. He's just incredible at everything. I wanted him to win. He was going to win, but Tommy's a good friend of mine. I'm glad he won. But how I felt after was that I didn't like the competition aspect of having to choose one over the others. I like the idea that being nominated is important. Recognizing people's talent is important. It really is. And I was judging for the Junos for a little while, like Producer of the Year, Engineer of the Year. And I just want to give them all nominations and I want to give them all awards because, you get all dressed up, you show up to the show, and then they call another guy's name. It's like, well, everybody works hard on their music. So
You'd be the Oprah of the Junos. You get a car, you get a car, you get a car.
yeah. I thought I kind of needed to take a break from award shows for a bit. That's the one thing I would say. But again, I don't want to see the negative of it. I like that people are acknowledged. And yes, the CEO of the Junos is Alan Reed, who was one of my big champions at Maple Universal. So we worked together a lot, and now he's running the Junos. So I still watch every year, and I get excited, and so I hope to return one day. But whatever happens, I'm not going to be like, it doesn't matter. It's not one person's better than the other person. It's just about, let's celebrate Canadian music, and that's what's most important.
Yeah, Act 4. We'll put it out in the ether. That'll be the Juno comeback. So Act 2 was released in 2007. That's The Blood and the Life Eternal. The first single was Always. This is a top 20 hit in Canada, and it's the first Neverending White Lights single that has you as the vocalist. So how special was that single for you, maybe giving you that extra confidence that, hey, I can hold my own as a singer? It doesn't always have to be bringing in other singers as well.
Well, I didn't really know how to sing, and I was still trying to find my voice. So Always sounds like me kind of trying to be a little bit of a Billy Corgan, throaty, soft kind of, and I don't sing like that anymore. After 10 years of like some hard times and a lot of cigarettes and alcohol, my voice is a little bit different now. I think it sounds better, which for Act 4, I'm probably going to be singing the whole record. So I don't know if I've said that.
World premiere. There you go.
So, and I've been encouraged by a lot of fellow artists and singers that said, dude, like, you're sending me this song, you should sing it. And I feel like the time's right now for me to do that. So Act 4, I'm going to explore that a lot more. And from what I've already sort of demoed, I think my voice matches. Like, I'm not trying to do anything I can't do, I don't think, but I think it works. But Always was kind of the first time a single of mine singing was on the radio. And it was, again, another challenge to myself. Am I good enough to be on the radio as a singer too? And I mean, the thing with vocals is like, what makes a good singer anyways? Because there's all sorts of different types of singers. I mean, Bob Dylan, Billy Corgan, and, Ian Curtis from Joy Division aren't, they're not
your traditional beautiful voices. Yeah.
Yeah. But so I realized that all the sort of rumination and fear about what I can and can't do vocally, or what I should be doing, is really just, it doesn't really matter. As long as you're expressing what you need to express in the song, and it makes sense. And Always just, it was personal because I wrote it about a girl at the time that I was really interested in, and there was just something, nothing ever came of it, but there was something really special. And it was right around the time of the Junos. And I felt, okay, you know what, this is a very personal song. It was less about like existential concepts of spirituality at that point. And this was a simpler song, like if you ever come back, I will let you, was the foundation of the Always lyrics in the chorus. It was this idea that I knew it wasn't going to work, but I'm always going to have this door in my heart open to this person, and she just has that power over me, or whatever you want to call it. And it didn't feel right to have anyone else sing that for some reason. So
The second single was "The World Is Darker." So that's Melissa Odemeyer of Hole and of the Smashing Pumpkins. A couple questions about that is she's a great bass player. So I'm curious, does she play bass at all on that song, or it's you always played the instruments and just the singers came in? And the other question is, there's a whole cover of Miss World on that album. And I'm curious if there's the connection of her who played for Hole, and then there's a whole cover as well, or is that just complete coincidence?
Well, you'd have to believe that coincidence is real, which I believe everything happens for a reason, right? So synchronicity, maybe. She did not play bass. I played bass on it. I didn't even, I wasn't at the time in touch with her. I'd already recorded the song. And I was, I was really, I really loved her solo records. And I really loved what she did with Hole, because I was a huge Courtney Love fan. I had covered Miss World for a compilation, and a friend of mine said, "You have to put that on the record." To me, it almost made no sense. And he's like, "That's DV, you got to put that song on the record." Blah, blah, blah. I was like, you know what? And then it just kind of found its way on there. And I don't think I reached out to Courtney Love, but something prompted me. I think because Melissa's Canadian from Montreal, there was just something going on there, and I got in touch with her, and she sang the vocals with me in Toronto. It was a really fun session. And I told her that I had recorded a whole cover, and I asked her to sing backups on it, and she refused. And she said, "Well, maybe it's enough that I'm singing on just one song, and it's the same girl from Hole that's, on this song, and over here you're doing the other whole cover, and there's sort of a match in that way." I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I can't put her on every track." So
even though I want to.
Yeah, even though I want to, I was really geeked to work with her. She's so talented and creative.
There's a song with Hawksley Workman as well. So Warding Off the Spirits, I believe, is near the end of the album. I saw Hawksley Workman at a venue called the Live Lounge in Ottawa that is no longer a venue. And it's just a few hundred people, maybe a couple hundred people. And he got on stage by himself. There's one guy, and he just said, "What do you guys want me to play?" And for, I don't know, 2 hours, it was literally
requests
every single song. Like, he finished a song and someone's like, "Oh, play Smoke Baby." And he's like, "Okay, on which instrument?" And they're like, "On the bass." And he plays on the bass and sings it. And then there happened to be a drum kit because of whatever band that opened. And then someone just later on was like, "Just play the drums." He's like, "Okay." So he just goes and play. Like, it was a one-man band for 2 hours taking all requests. And I thought that maybe you guys would have this deep connection because you're both multi-instrument. I can't even say the word. I'm surprised I said it right in the intro. Multi-instrumentalists. Did you feel that connection with him as someone that's so musical?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I was a huge fan of his for a few records before I met him. And I was really excited because I knew that he played the drums, and I'd read it in an interview that he loved playing the drums the most, that he said recording drums is the most fun to do in the studio, which for me, that's what I always would say, was that, like, it's always more fun to play drums on a track than anything else. So when I was pitching him on the song, we had a long phone conversation, the first time we'd ever talked. And he's like, "I think we have this connection somehow." And I was like, "Oh my God," because I was such a huge fan. And so we talked and we talked and we talked. And he's like, "Man, me and you are going to be really, really good friends. We definitely have a connection. We're so similar." I haven't seen him too much over the years. He did text me last week, though, out of the complete blue, and sent me some information on somebody to maybe mix Act 4. And I'm trying to go see his show in Toronto, because Jimmy Necco, who is one of my favorite artists of all time,
he's on one of the songs, isn't he? Jimmy Necco.
Jimmy from the band Hours sings 2 songs, one on Act 1, one on Act 2. And we've toured together many times. And when I played Jimmy Hoxley's album, it was Lover Fighter.
So good.
Jimmy had a meltdown. Now Jimmy is
Like a good meltdown?
yeah, he's the stuff of legend. Jimmy's like, Stone Temple Pilots wanted him to replace Scott Weiland, and he plays with Guns N' Roses and Slash, and Velvet Revolver wanted him, and so what was I saying? Oh yeah,
About Hoxley texting you. Yeah.
we're out in the woods, and I play him the Hoxley record, and he's just staring at the speakers. And I played him Ilfracombe, which is a hidden song on that record. And he heard it once, and then he says, "Take me to the mall. I got to buy this record." And we were like, an hour outside the city.
He needed it right then.
Stop everything. We got in the car, and we all the way to the mall, in Windsor, Ontario. And he just walked right into the store, and then he bought this record, and he just listened to it over and over and over again. And so it was Jimmy's idea a week ago to get tickets to go see Hawk. So he said, "We got to go see him," And I thought, these two have never met, and they're both insane talent. So I want to get them in the same room just to be like, imagine that much musical power. It's like
the rock radiation will be next level for sure.
Yeah. So I told Hoxley that Jimmy's going to come see him. And so Hoxley's excited. And so, yeah, I'm like, well, we have to do something that night, the three of us, maybe musical, maybe not, but yeah, so yeah, Hawk and I do have a really great connection. And I think it's amazing that he's continued doing, like, his career is still going strong, and he's still putting out records, and I'm still putting them on and being excited about them and impressed.
I wish I was close enough to him that I could just call him Hawk, but maybe someday. So you in 2011 you released Act 3, Love Will Ruin, and the two singles, Falling Apart featuring Bed of Stars and Ghost Ship featuring Hot Hot Heat. I was going to ask you, those two singles and a lot of the album are more up-tempo rock, and I was going to ask you why you think that is, and you mentioned there's some outside influence of what they think might be cool, what might sell.
Also, what also influenced the tempo increasing was the live shows. Playing slow songs live is hard. It's just hard because people are out and they want to have a good time. And sometimes, like, it was hard for me to do an hour and a half of just like really slow songs, especially when I love upbeat music too, and I want to engage the audience. So I started increasing the tempos on some of the songs. That's where always became a complete reaction in tempo, because it's like 150 beats per minute to the Grace being so slow. And then with Act 3, it was like, let's be a little rockier, edgier. Let's throw some grit in there. So yeah, it was a reaction not only just to the pressure of having to become a little more accessible and commercial, but also to make the live shows more exciting.
So Falling Apart has great sounding bass, and it's got some cool sounding hand claps. Any advice on how to get a good sounding bass in the studio, or how you got the sound for that song? And then hand claps, I never know if those are recorded or if there's like a database of hand claps.
I record everything. So it wouldn't feel right if I had synthetic hand claps, the bass tones are like, for me, it's distortion. It's got to be, there always should be some amount of distortion on bass. Otherwise, it's just, unless you're doing something that's, really specific, the bass will speak when you have the right amount of distortion.
Is the distortion from pushing the amp harder, or is it from a pedal?
Yeah, on that one, what I would do is I would take two outputs of the bass. So I would split a clean, it's called like a direct line into the computer that is not touched through anything, so that later you can go and manipulate that or use that for the bottom end. And then I ran the other patch to a guitar amplifier. And you really shouldn't put bass through guitars, you might blow it, but if you keep it to a moderate level. So the guitar is going to give it a mid-range, and Yeah, I probably used a pedal because I wouldn't want to push the amp too much because you'll blow the speaker with those frequencies. But so I had a couple really cool pedals and just spike in a little bit of distortion and then mix the two signals. When we mix, you have the direct signal and then the raunchy sort of overdrive. And if you don't like the amp, you can still take the DI. And I think for a couple songs, Gus Van Gogh in New York reamped the DI signal with his own amps, which is a huge technique for bass. So you just like reamp using a different amp because you have that clean signal. Um, and he also had a plugin called the Sans amp that he used on a lot of things that gave it that raunch. So
the second single was Ghost Ship featuring Hot Hot Heat. That's another top 10 single. When I sing, I have a high nasally voice. It doesn't sound anything like how I speak. And the singer from Hot Hot Heat is known for having a high distinct voice. Do you have to change up what you do when recording a voice like that? Do you test out different mics to see what maybe rounds out that voice or thickens it or shaves off some higher piercing frequencies? Is it EQing it differently? Any insider information on recording that voice?
well, so Steve Bass from Hot Hot Heat, some people didn't think that his voice would make sense on a Neverending White Lights record, but that was the point. Just like, how can you challenge, like the idea that a singer has to sound like Dallas Green to have a beautiful ballad.
That's hard to do. Yeah.
So Steve Bays, he's a high yelpy singer because Hot Heat is like, bandages on my legs and my arms from you. It's just like really yelpy. And this is a ballad. So I was really excited to see how it was going to work. And he wouldn't let me get near him. So he said, I will not allow you to record me. I have to do it my own way. And it's a secret, special way that nobody knows.
He didn't give you the secret sauce at all. He made you leave the room.
No, he's really particular. He says, I don't even want you to mix my vocals. He says, I've got to do it all myself. So he has in his Vancouver studio a little setup, right, with the compressor dialed in the way he likes it and his mic technique. And I don't think he likes people watching him. And so he gave me a vocal that was already the way he wanted it. He was very, very specific about that. No one touches my voice, he said. And I can see that because he's found his groove, right? If I go somewhere else to record, somebody doesn't understand how I like to sing, I might sound more self-conscious or so. I think it worked though. I think the vocal track sounds pretty good.
Sounds great. Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Act 4. So the world doesn't know much about this yet. I don't know how much you can say, but the goal is to release this in 2023, next year.
The goal has been to release it every year since 2012.
Yeah. Is there a chance 2023?
Yeah. The idea is to put out a new song finally after 11 years and stop worrying that it has to be some kind of, grandiose re-arrival, because I already psyched myself, out countless times trying to figure out what people want from me, what I'm supposed to outdo in my previous records, how to be relevant, how to not be relevant, what sounds are in now. Like, that's all gone now. So I've got music. Do I love the music? I do. I feel confident about it. So I'm going to probably release a song either this fall, like maybe, or next year. But 2032, I'm sorry.
We're not waiting that long, brother. We need a song.
Oh God, we don't want another 10 years.
Yeah.
2023. I keep saying 2032 to people. Next year for sure.
That's that long-term vision, I guess. I don't know what's going on 2032.
I'll be on like Act 10 by then. Next year, I have to, I will be letting myself down if I don't put it out. But I can only do what I feel comfortable doing as it shows up. And if it's not ready or I don't find the right people to help, because I don't really have anybody yet, I don't know what's going to happen. But I'm confident, 80% that it'll come out next year. I just have to sing. I still have to sing vocals on it and then mix. So it's really not that far. And there were about 70 songs, 70 that I had to whittle it down from. So in order to do that, I just decided to put them all in a hat, just write them all out and put them in a hat and ask the universe which songs do people most need right now. I believe that was the focus. And I did it in a meditation. And then I had my friend Georgia Jean, who I work with on the spiritual stuff, also choose so that we could have like, did you get this one? Okay, one vote for this one vote for this one. And a lot of the songs I thought were going to be on the record got eliminated. And the album turned into something that I didn't even see because I couldn't figure out in 70 songs because there's so much different diversity and elements on the stuff that it's like, where's the cohesion? So I said, I'm going to surrender on it. I don't know mentally, but I know like higher self does, or my soul or the angels or whatever. So I asked them, can you pick the track listing? Okay. So I'm not going to look. And I, said, okay, we're going to do, 15 songs. And I made sure to specifically say that this has to be what the world wants, not what will make me happy, but that, and I'm sure there's a match between the two. So I picked the songs. That's the record. I'm not going to change it unless I write something new or I feel called to reevaluate. That's the record. Hopefully next year.
So I was going to ask, Act 1 had, I believe, 16 songs. Act 2 had 15 songs. Act 3 had 11 songs, a little shorter. So I was going to ask if we knew around the song total, and you're saying it should be about 15?
I like the number 13 because of the heaven plane frequency number of 13 dimensions, but between 12 and 15. But then again, I was thinking of pressing vinyl because I've never pressed vinyl. And I was thinking of maybe doing 4 songs on 2 records, do like a 16 thing, 4, 4, 4, and 4, and keeping it even. But vinyl's so expensive. I don't know. I guess we'll see.
We're going to bring in a billionaire sponsor to make all this happen. Money will be no issue here.
That'd be amazing.
We're gonna put that out there. Can you give us any insight on maybe sonically what you think it'll sound like, or is it mix of up tempo, down tempo? Is it? I don't know. I guess I'm grasping at anything you'll give me as a fan for what to expect musically.
Well, the problem with waiting so long between records is that I went through different phases. And so there's different eras within that almost 12 years that are different, that sound different and feel different. So it was hard for me to figure out which songs are going to make sense together and have the same kind of flavor. And that's why I feel this was done the right way. But I was starting to get inspired by some shoegazy 80s sort of like New Order and The Cure guitar sounds with chorus on them and a lot of reverb. I've also been inspired by like trip hoppy soul stuff recently. So I found the melodies on some of these songs are almost R&B-ish. Like they almost, I'm trying to think if that happened on a previous record of mine. They're a little more soulful, some of them. And then there's a few piano ballads that are just really, really emotional. So I did one song on my web show 2 years ago called Marianne, and people were crying. Like I had family members that never heard it and they were crying. I'm like, okay, that's a good sign. There's a song called Orphans that is also a piano ballad, and it's my favorite song I've ever written. And every time I hear it, it's almost overwhelming for me to listen to. Like I just get so emotional. And to me, that's just those are always great signs, is to see if you can get goosebumps or shivers. So most of the material has been tested through the emotional testing system to see that when those songs come on, I have to feel some kind of tingle or some kind of sensation for it to make the cut. So yeah, there's a few piano ballads. It's not very orchestral. The record didn't turn into anything like sort of like orchestral cinematic. It's more synth pads, coarse guitars, a lot of programming, almost no real drums at this point. And yeah, I think and the concept of it has still yet to reveal itself as I'm still kind of writing the words out. It was originally supposed to be a concept record about the ascension of humanity, where everyone is sort of going through this increase in frequency, and so I think it's going to touch on that. I have a couple working names, but I can't say what they are because I haven't released the name.
So it'll be Act 4, but we don't know what the rest of the name is.
I'm still out to lunch on exactly what to title it, but I know I have the working title. If you can read my mind.
Okay, I got it, but I'll keep it between
four words. Act 4, 4 words, but that could change.
So normally I ask guests that have been writing and recording during the pandemic what the challenges have been. And I feel like for you, maybe it's not the same challenges because you're a one-man band in self-isolation anyways. So has it been pretty much what you normally do?
In quarantine,
like living that quarantine life since 2005 or whatever.
I work alone. I work in isolation. I hadn't left the house in years anyway, really. I'd grown my hair down to here. I just cut it because, lockdown's over and it's time to come out of hermit mode. But yeah, the pandemic didn't change much for me recording. But I'm curious to hear what the albums that are coming out are going to sound like that were written and recorded during that time.
Yeah. You had to get a big haircut before this big Zoom interview. I understand. So we're coming near the end here. So I like to finish with some rapid fire questions. So I'll just blast through a few questions and just quick answers, give the fans what they want. Does that work for you?
Absolutely.
All right. So these are very musical. So which band were you the biggest fan of before being on the same bill as them for a concert? Did you get to perform with any favorite bands?
Ours would be my most favorite, and touring with them where they were my opening act was, I felt wrong about being the headliner for my most favorite band. And secondly, Our Lady Peace, because we got to tour with them in an arena tour. Wow. And I grew up with Our Lady Peace, so being on stage with them was just a dream.
I was going to ask, what's the biggest show you've ever played? I'm assuming it's with Our Lady Peace, and if you're playing arenas.
So those were arenas, so that was big. I think Edge Fest in Toronto was probably the biggest. It was probably about 13,000, 14,000 people. It's a pretty big show.
And what's the best live concert you've ever seen?
One of them randomly was a band called Brand Van 3000.
From Montreal.
Drinking
in LA.
Yeah. Don't ask me why, but right place, right time in Detroit. They were so good. I was probably 18 and they just blew my mind. I'll never forget that show ever. And then in more recent years, the National, I got to see the National. I think they were coming off of the High Violet record, which is one of my favorites. And it was Under the Stars, and I'd spent the day. It was actually the Laneway Festival, which was an Australian event, and I had just seen Sigur Rós on stage like an hour before, and I was walking over, and the stars were coming out, and I was like, there was something magical. And then National came on, and it just melted me. It was incredible.
So this Blues Fest festival where I'm seeing Rage Against the Machine, the final night, so it's like a 2-week festival. The final night is the National. So I'll be seeing that as well.
Amazing.
All right, what else we got here? Are there any new artists that deserve more attention? So just if you can think of one or two artists that you have no idea why they're not bigger than, like their popularity doesn't match how talented they are, kind of thing.
Um, well, I feel like that about a lot of the music I listen to. So when I used to do my best music of the year lists, I would try to focus on really underground artists. So the two I'll mention today, one's a band called WY. It's a husband and wife. I think they're out of Europe somewhere. Really great band, and they have a song called Bathrooms, which was one of my number one songs a couple years ago. And just not enough attention, not enough fans. But there's so many bands like that. More recently, there's this female artist named Ethel Kane that I really love, and I've got tickets to go see her, which I'm really excited. She released a song a few weeks ago called American Dream, and it's just like blowing my mind. I don't think she's that popular, but so yeah, those two. But for me, it's like the vast majority of indie rock does not get recognition. Like rock has been dead for a long time. If you go back to like Kings of Leon and the Killers and the last, Arcade Fires of 10, 15 years ago, there's no one carrying that torch right now. Like for new bands, So I think there's got to be an upswing in indie music.
So last rapid fire question, and then there's two final deeper questions. So if you could sit down with anyone for a conversation, who would it be?
Anyone for a conversation, I would probably have to say that although it might seem cliche, so the two people that come to mind, one from when I was really little, being such a fan of the Beatles, I was really transfixed with John Lennon. I was obsessed with him. He was the first real rock icon that I was enamored with, and learning that he was dead when I was old enough to understand that, like I was mourning. And I've been told through some spiritual work that I do have some sort of lineage connection to John. So I do feel that would be a really important thing. And also David Bowie, for me, like when he died, I was just absolutely devastated. I was devastated and really sick about it for a long time. I don't know what it is about how special he was. I can't put my finger on it, that I can't see it in anyone else that way, and the talents like Prince or George Michael is another big favorite of mine, or it's like, or Morrissey, who I love. There's just nobody like David Bowie. And it's not even that he just reinvented himself so much. There's just it's like he was an alien almost. There's this spiritual alien like genius. And I would just have so many questions for David Bowie. So yeah.
How amazing is it that when he passed away, he left behind a completed album that was one of his best albums ever. It was like one of the best, most critically acclaimed albums of all time. After he passed away, he left like one final gift, knowing he was on his way out.
Probably left another one. That's insane. What a beautiful record. I guess it glows in the dark too, if you hold it up to the light.
I got to spend more time in the dark, I suppose.
Like, oh, it glows. There's stars on it. Incredible.
So final couple questions. So these don't have to be rapid fire. Do you have any musical dreams that are still in your heart that have yet to be fulfilled?
Yeah, my whole life is a series of musical dreams that never stop. So I really want to get back to making music again. Because it's been 12 years. So that's dream number one. I want to continue making Neverending White Lights sequential, like the Act 5, the Act 6, the Act 7, and kind of see if I can turn it into a book or a story where the albums are the chapters. And I've played around with that. And it's really, really ambitious because, it's like a little too much one thing at a time. But so that's another big creative thing I always wanted to do was to turn albums into books. like to buy the book, Act One, Goodbye Friends with Heavenly Bodies, and read the story that corresponds. I always thought that would be really neat. I also wanted to create a scent for the new album that would smell like the sound is supposed to feel. So if it's like, burnt embers and rain or whatever, and then I wanted to start having records that were scented or attached to, like you'd have Act Four, you'd have Act Two, and but I couldn't find anybody to work with on that project. But and then yeah, in general, my biggest dreams are still to. I've always wanted to perform Saturday Night Live. That's a big one on my list. I've always wanted to be nominated for a Grammy. I always wanted to be writing music for some fairly big names that can take songs that aren't so personal that I write, that I also have, and find an outlet for them. Because I write songs that are 2-3 minutes and really simple also, but I can't really put them on NWL because they're not as meaningful. So songwriting for other people, producing for other people, more collaborations, and I finally want to be able to master the art of performing, like to have an actual touring show that I can express what I've always wanted to visually, because I was always stifled. You got to play these rock clubs and there's no money. And I wanted a choir on stage in full like gospel garb, and I want an orchestra on stage, at least a part of an orchestra on stage, and backup singers and percussion sets, and I want to dress the stage a certain way, and I want to do the show in intermission and an act, and I want people to come in, and I want to bring different artists on stage and present it as this Broadway musical, Neverending White Lights, rock, whatever you want to call it. And that's still something I haven't been able to even remotely put together. But yeah, so those are some of the musical dreams.
And when you look back on your life and career, what are you most proud of and what are you most grateful for?
Well, I'm grateful always for my talent, my gifts, my creative expression. That I'm grateful that I've stayed true to who I am and that I can express myself instead of giving up when it's gotten really easy to give up. I've kept the light on, and I think that's really important. Um, it's I think the idea is, when I'm finished on Earth, that the legacy that I've left has helped people and it has had purpose, not just that it's been personally fulfilling for me to jam and write songs because I like the way these songs sound in my own space, but that the world has changed somehow from the music. And that to me is the most important takeaway of anything that I could ever do. It's the one thing I want to be known for and remembered for. And I won't stop at anything at this point in my life to keep making music. And I know a lot of people think, bands aren't important, or, singers are important, but really it's just such a frequency, and the nature of frequency is the way that we relate to one another. Like everything has a frequency, and songs are pure frequency. Like you could sit there in a chamber and listen to the healing energies of the pyramids and start to feel your body shift. So for musicians out there, get out there and make records, because we need music. And it's kind of been difficult for people to do that. I mean, I know with the music industry and stuff, for a lot of people, they have to quit. So I really want to be an advocate for artists to share their gifts no matter what. And that's part of what I feel, I'm here to help people do, as well as do it myself.
Yeah, I don't know that a world without music is one that I'd want to be a part of. Music is so important, and sometimes funding, education, it's the things that they cut, and it might be the most important.
Yeah, that sucks sometimes, but I think if enough people really start to believe in its power and its importance, because we don't really have as much of it, like it's a little different nowadays. I think, sending the message out to get people to to not worry about the financial repercussions of it, starving artist, or all these ideals, that it's not lucrative. I think it can be very lucrative and it can be very successful, but you're doing your part as an artist when you create something. As any creator, as we're all creators, just create anything that you feel called to create and put it in the world. That's how the world shifts.
Final question. If you could go back in time and you could sit down next to your 10-year-old self, and if you could whisper advice to help that 10-year-old self, move through this life, what advice would you give? I mean, you've had all these years of highs and lows, triumphs and failures, mentorship, courses, gurus, all this stuff. What advice do you give cute little Daniel Victor at 10 years old to help him along the way?
Well, number one is to stop caring so much about the anxiety of what other people think, what the world thinks, and your insecurities, and not achieving benchmarks and successes that other people have set up for you. To encircle yourself in this idea that it doesn't matter to me what other people think, because so much of what I was trying to be when I was younger was measured by what other people thought I was supposed to be doing, family members, pressure, academics, a job, money, and it felt very uncomfortable, and it made me very sick for a long time. So it's don't care, don't care about this and what you want to do most. Don't be afraid of anything ever. Fear is out the window. And how do you do that? And the advice is to understand that it's an illusion that your mind makes up to try to protect you, right? Because we have this ego that comes in and tries to tell you, you don't do this. This is safer. You don't want to do this because this is safer. And then you play it safe, and then you become boring, and then you become, spiritless, and then you just become this hollow caricature of yourself that you didn't get to find out what you were really capable of. So fear gets in the way of everything. And it's, to me, one of the most important things is to eradicate fear completely and remember that you're only creating it because your mind's trying to protect you. It's not really there. There's nothing really to be afraid of. And then thirdly is the idea that we are eternal, and to take that with you, and to remember that this is what I believe now, and it's important to me that you truly live forever in other realms, and that you don't have to fear life ending, because it will go on. But you will only get to be this character or this avatar now. So you're not probably going to reincarnate, as Joel in the next life. You're going to be your next journey. So be the best Joel you can be now. For me, be the best Daniel Victor that you can be now. Don't worry about anything else, because really there's nothing there. It's just you, right? Yeah. So those key points is what I felt in my awakening in the past 10 years that has really helped me, letting go of fear, not caring about what others think. And I would say lastly, probably the most important would be, love, remembering self-love, learning how to find self-love, because you can't love other people until you have filled these parts of you with your own self-love. So self-love is kind of the gateway to being able to really get down and help other people. And if everybody practice those things without worrying about what other people thought, without being afraid to fail or afraid of death or anything else, the world is your oyster at that point. Like you have so much power and potential available when you embrace those types of things. And it prevents those types of concepts can prevent a lot of trauma from sticking around. Because when you realize that love is more important than fear, and you remember that all the time, you don't get trapped into that well. You just test yourself. Is this fearful situation or a loving situation? And then you just choose the loving way to experience it. And if it's ever seems to be fearful, there's something in it that needs to be understood. It doesn't have to make you afraid. Like, no matter what, even if you're dying on your deathbed, You say, well, this is the most stressful situation. I'm being eaten by a shark right now. Okay, but it's like, what can we learn from the shark? No. At that point, there's still no benefit in resisting and fearing it. You know, I mean, unless you're able to maybe run from a tiger and your system's telling you run, yeah, okay, but fear is not what we think, and we see so much of it on the news. We see so much of it with the media. Everything's terror, and everybody's. The reason people are struggling so much is because they didn't learn how to ignore fear or not believe in it anymore. It's still there. And if any part of that fear still exists, you're going to have a hard time in something because there's something you're going to be worried about, you know? So yeah, it's just love over fear. That's a big one.
It's all amazing advice. So for our listeners, for your fans, if they want to reach out to you, is there somewhere on social media where they can, you know, reach out and say, hey, I love the episode, or hey, I'd love to be in the loop when a new song is coming or the new album? Where do they find you online?
Well, our website's down right now because we've been in between for so long, but
Instagram or Facebook or anywhere?
It's great. Yeah. So at I think it's at Neverending White Lights.
They can Google.
I don't even know. Twitter at I am Neverending. I know that one. I'm not good at social media stuff, and I'm on Facebook. You know, I still keep a Facebook account. So and any messages are always welcome. I always speak to friends, fans, any listeners. I always reach back, and if anybody needs, you know, help, advice, or wants to chat, I'm always available to lend a hand.
So as we wrap up, I want to take a moment to acknowledge you for your lifelong pursuit of mastery as a musician, as a multi-instrumentalist, as a songwriter, as a singer, as a producer, engineer, all those things. I want to take a moment to acknowledge you for having this idea for an unconventional musical project and following through with it to, you know, to the peak of the industry, and continuing to do so now, and seeing where this will lead over your lifetime. And you know, I want to acknowledge you for creating timeless music that has touched many people around the world. I mean, the music lives on as we move forward. You know, the courage to step away and take that hiatus for a decade when it was needed for your own mental health and your own personal growth. So, you know, it takes courage to actually step away when, you know, maybe it's like the fruits of whatever are still in the music industry, and then the courage to actually talk about mental health, which helps a lot of people, especially during the pandemic, that are dealing with depression and you know, drug addiction, and as far as suicide, you know, just people that are isolated and alone. I think that your story can be a beacon of light and a beacon of hope. And I guess the last thing I want to acknowledge you for is, just as a fan of your music, I mentioned like 15 or 17 years ago, I came out, I saw you in concert. I've been listening to your music ever since. So, you know, to take the time to sit down with me for a couple hours, you know, this is for the fans of yours, the fans of the podcast. But, you know, the truth is, this is for a Neverending White Lights fan, being able to ask 2 hours worth of questions, answers that I've always wanted to know. So, Daniel, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. And it's a complete honor. And thank you for listening and for staying, you know, in the Neverending White Lights field during this long sort of hiatus. It really means a lot that people are still there, that people are still interested and passionate about the songs that I had written back then and want to hear more. That's what inspires me to keep going. So thank you.
You're very welcome. So to our listeners, to Daniel's fans, Neverending White Light fans, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sticking with us for the last couple hours, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I'd love to hear from you guys. My goal is to grow this podcast organically, where you're giving me feedback on topics you'd like me to cover and guests you'd like me to interview. You can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Joel Martin Mastery. Joel is Joel, and on Twitter at Joel Mastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.